Hi everyone, welcome to our podcast Hey English. This is episode number 16. I'm Philip.
And I'm Sara. We're thrilled to have you join us today. How are you doing, Philip?
I'm doing great, Sara, thanks. Today, we're diving into one of our favorite topics, vacations.
Yes. We'll be sharing our personal travel experiences, favorite destinations, and some handy tips for making the most out of your trips.
But that's not all. As we chat about our adventures, we'll also be explaining some useful English vocabulary, grammar points, idioms, and phrases.
Exactly. So whether you're planning your next getaway or just dreaming about it, we've got something for everyone.
We'll be breaking down the conversation into different segments, each packed with fun stories and helpful language tips.
And don't worry, we'll make sure to explain everything clearly, so you can improve your English while enjoying our travel tales.
So, grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and let's get started.
Let's dive into the wonderful world of vacations. Here we go.
Alright, Sara, let's dive right in. When it comes to planning your vacations, where do you usually start?
Well, Philip, the first step for me is always choosing a destination. I like to think about what kind of experience I'm looking for, whether it's a relaxing beach holiday or an adventurous hike in the mountains.
That makes sense. Picking the right destination sets the tone for the entire trip. For me, once I have a destination in mind, the next step is looking for flights and accommodations.
Absolutely. And finding the right place to stay is crucial. I usually compare different options, read reviews, and check for any deals. Speaking of which, have you found any good travel deal websites lately?
I have. Websites like Skyscanner and Airbnb have been super helpful. They offer a lot of options and sometimes even discounts. And hey, this is a great time to introduce some vocabulary, right?
Definitely. So, listeners, a destination is a place to which someone is going or being sent. And accommodations refer to places where you stay, like hotels, hostels, or vacation rentals.
And when we talk about flights, we're referring to the trips made by an airplane from one place to another. These words are super handy when planning any trip.
Exactly. And let's not forget the importance of planning activities in advance. I usually make a list of must-see attractions and local experiences I don't want to miss.
Good point. It's always a good idea to have a rough itinerary but also leave some room for spontaneous adventures. That balance makes for the best trips.
Absolutely. And while we're on the topic, let's share a quick grammar tip. When we talk about our routines or habits, we use the present simple tense. For example, I start by choosing a destination and I look for flights and accommodations.
Great tip, Sara. Using the present simple tense helps us describe things we do regularly, which is perfect for talking about how we usually plan our vacations.
So, to all our listeners, remember to think about your destination, plan your flights and accommodations, and make a list of activities. And of course, use those new vocabulary words and grammar tips as you go.
Planning is the first exciting step of any vacation. We hope these tips help make your next trip even more amazing. And now, let's move on to our favorite destinations. Speaking of destinations, Sara, what's one of your all-time favorite places to visit?
Oh, that's an easy one for me, Italy. There's just something magical about it. The food, the culture, the history, everything is just so vibrant and full of life.
Italy sounds amazing. What's your favorite city there?
I'd have to say Rome. The mix of ancient history and modern life is incredible. Walking through the ruins of the Colosseum, then grabbing a gelato at a nearby cafe, it's the perfect blend of past and present.
I can see why you'd love it. For me, Japan is at the top of my list. It's this perfect mix of tradition and modernity. Tokyo's skyscrapers and neon lights are something to behold, and then there's the tranquility of Kyoto's temples and gardens.
Japan is definitely on my bucket list. And speaking of blend, that's a great word to describe how two different things mix together seamlessly. And modernity refers to the quality or condition of being modern.
Absolutely. And let's not forget some useful idioms. When we say something is a perfect blend, it means it's an ideal mixture of different elements. Like in Tokyo, where you can experience both high-tech gadgets and ancient traditions.
Yes, idioms are so colorful and fun to use. Another one I love is culture shock, which describes the feeling of disorientation you get when experiencing an unfamiliar culture. Have you ever felt that, Philip?
Definitely. The first time I went to Japan, everything from the food to the customs was so different from what I was used to. But that's what makes travel so exciting, the opportunity to learn and adapt.
Exactly. And that's why traveling to different destinations can be such a rich experience. Each place offers its own unique charm and lessons.
So, whether it's enjoying a fresh bowl of ramen in Japan or exploring ancient ruins in Italy, there's always something new and wonderful to discover.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, we encourage you to explore different places and immerse yourself in new cultures. It's one of the best ways to broaden your horizons and enrich your life.
And don't forget to use the vocabulary and idioms we've talked about today when you describe your own travels. It'll make your stories even more vivid and engaging.
Speaking of stories, we'd love to hear about your favorite destinations. Leave a comment below and tell us where you've been and what made it special for you.
Traveling is all about sharing experiences and learning from each other. And now, let's get into some memorable travel experiences. Sarah, do you have a story for us?
Oh, I have plenty of travel stories. One of my most memorable experiences was a road trip I took last summer across the United States.
That sounds amazing. What made it so special?
Well, it was just me and a couple of friends, driving through different states, seeing all the diverse landscapes and stopping at quirky little towns along the way. We visited places like the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, and even some off-the-beaten-path spots that were just as breathtaking.
That sounds like an incredible adventure. The freedom of the open road and discovering new places must have been exhilarating.
It truly was. And speaking of road trip, this term refers to a long journey made by car, and incredible means something that's hard to believe or extraordinary.
Perfect examples. So, what was the highlight of your road trip?
Oh, that's a tough one. But if I had to choose, I'd say watching the sunset over the Grand Canyon. It was one of those moments that just takes your breath away.
I can imagine. Nature has a way of making us feel so small yet so connected. For me, one of my favorite travel experiences was exploring the temples of Kyoto during cherry blossom season.
That sounds magical. What stood out to you the most?
The sheer beauty of the cherry blossoms in full bloom was stunning. Walking through the gardens with the delicate pink petals falling around me felt like stepping into a fairy tale. Plus, the hospitality of the locals made the experience even more special.
I love hearing about those personal touches. And it's interesting how certain moments stick with us. Traveling really gives us those incredible experiences that we remember forever.
Exactly. And these experiences teach us so much about different cultures and ways of life. It's why we travel, isn't it? To create those unforgettable memories and learn along the way.
Definitely. And for our listeners, remember to use the past simple tense when you're sharing your travel stories. For example, I went on a road trip or I explored the temples. It's a simple yet powerful way to recount your adventures.
Great tips, Sarah. So, listeners, think about your own memorable travel experiences. What made them special? Share them with us in the comments. We'd love to hear your stories.
Travel is all about making connections and sharing our journeys. And speaking of tips, let's move on to some practical travel tips that can make your next adventure even better. Philip, do you have any good ones?
I sure do, Sarah. One of my top travel tips is to always keep a copy of your important documents. You never know when you might need a backup.
That's a great tip, Philip. I always make digital copies of my passport, travel insurance, and any other important papers and keep them in my email or cloud storage.
Absolutely. It can save you a lot of hassle if anything goes missing. Another tip is to try learning a few basic phrases in the local language of the place you're visiting. It can make a huge difference.
Definitely. Even just knowing how to say hello, please, and thank you can go a long way in making connections with locals and showing respect for their culture.
Exactly. Plus, it's a fun way to immerse yourself in the culture. And speaking of languages, let's introduce some vocabulary. Documents are official papers that provide information or proof of something. And phrases are small groups of words that stand together as a conceptual unit.
Great explanations, Philip. Another tip I have is to pack light. Overpacking can make travel more stressful, especially if you're moving around a lot. Stick to essentials and versatile clothing.
Good point, Sarah. Packing light means you have less to carry and worry about. It also gives you more flexibility. And here's an idiom that fits well: off the beaten path. It means a place that's not well known or popular with many people.
I love that idiom. Finding those hidden gems off the beaten path can make for some of the best travel experiences. And here's another one: live out of a suitcase. It means to stay in different places and not have a permanent home, which is very common for frequent travelers.
Perfect idiom, Sarah. It captures the essence of travel nicely. Another tip I swear by is to always have some local currency on hand. While many places accept cards, having cash can be handy for small vendors or tips.
Absolutely. And don't forget to notify your bank of your travel plans to avoid any issues with your cards. Also, stay hydrated and keep some snacks with you, especially during long flights or road trips.
Great advice. And for those who love capturing their travel memories, invest in a good camera or make sure your phone has plenty of storage. Photos and videos are wonderful ways to relive your adventures.
So true. And let's not forget about safety. Always be aware of your surroundings, keep an eye on your belongings, and have a plan for emergencies. It's better to be prepared.
Safety is paramount. And, listeners, these tips are just starting points. Tailor them to your own travel style and needs to make the most of your journeys.
Exactly. Traveling is a personal experience, and what works for one person might not work for another. The key is to find what makes your travel smooth and enjoyable.
So, whether it's keeping documents safe, learning local phrases, or packing light, use these tips to enhance your next adventure. And now, let's delve into some language tips that can help you when you're on the go. Ready, Sarah?
Absolutely, Philip. One important aspect of traveling is being able to communicate effectively. So let's dive into some language tips that can be super helpful when you're on the go.
Great idea, Sarah. A good place to start is with the future tenses, which are really useful when you're making travel plans. For example, you can use going to for planned future actions. Like, I'm going to visit Paris next summer.
Exactly. And another way to talk about future plans is using will for spontaneous decisions. For instance, if you decide to go somewhere on a whim, you might say, I'll book a ticket to Tokyo right now.
Good point. It's a simple yet effective way to communicate your plans and decisions. And here's a quick vocabulary tip: spontaneous means something that happens suddenly and without planning.
Great word. And while we're on vocabulary, let's talk about itinerary. An itinerary is a planned route or journey. For example, my itinerary includes visiting 3 different cities in Japan.
Perfect example, Sarah. And another useful phrase is must see. This refers to places or attractions that you definitely should visit. For example, the Eiffel Tower is a must see in Paris.
I love that phrase. It's so handy when talking about top attractions. And here's a quick idiom: hit the road. It means to start a journey or begin traveling. Like, we're going to hit the road early tomorrow to beat the traffic.
That's a fun idiom. Using these phrases and vocabulary will not only make your English more fluent but also more interesting. It helps paint a vivid picture of your travel plans and experiences.
Absolutely. And don't forget to practice these expressions in real-life situations. The more you use them, the more natural they'll feel.
So, listeners, next time you're planning a trip or chatting about your travels, try incorporating these language tips. It'll make your conversations richer and more engaging.
And remember, language learning is a journey, just like traveling. Enjoy the process and have fun with it.
That's right. Speaking of journeys, we hope you've enjoyed ours so far today. Let's wrap things up with a quick recap and some final thoughts. Sound good, Sarah?
Sounds perfect, Philip. Now, let's touch on something really fascinating about traveling: cultural differences. Every place has its unique customs and traditions that can be so interesting to learn about.
Definitely, Sarah. For example, tipping customs can vary greatly between countries. In the US, it's customary to tip 15 to 20% at restaurants, but in Japan, tipping can actually be considered rude.
That's so true. And understanding these differences can really enhance your travel experience. It shows respect for the local culture and helps you connect better with people.
Exactly. Speaking of customs, the word customs refers to traditional practices or usual ways of doing things in a particular society. It's important to be aware of these when you travel.
Right. And another interesting aspect is the different ways people greet each other. In some cultures, a handshake is the norm, while in others, like in France, people might greet each other with a kiss on the cheek.
Good point, Sarah. These small details can make a big difference in how you're perceived by locals. And it's always a good idea to research and understand these cultural norms before you visit.
Absolutely. And here's an idiom that fits perfectly: when in Rome, do as the Romans do. It means that you should adopt the customs and behaviors of the place you're visiting.
I love that idiom. It's a great reminder to be adaptable and open-minded. Embracing local customs can lead to some of the most memorable travel experiences.
So true. And for our listeners, remember that learning about cultural differences not only enriches your travel experience but also broadens your perspective on the world.
Well said, Sarah. It's all about showing respect and being willing to learn. That's what makes travel so rewarding.
Exactly. And speaking of rewarding, we hope you found our discussion today helpful and inspiring. As we wrap up, let's share a quick recap of what we've covered.
Great points on cultural differences, Sarah. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that's becoming increasingly important: sustainable travel.
Yes, sustainability is such a crucial topic. We all love to explore new places, but it's also important to think about how we can minimize our impact on the environment.
Exactly. One simple way to travel more sustainably is by using public transportation instead of renting a car or taking taxis. It reduces your carbon footprint and lets you experience the local culture in a more authentic way.
Great tip, Philip. Another way is to support local businesses. Eating at local restaurants, staying in eco-friendly accommodations, and buying souvenirs from local artisans not only helps the local economy but also reduces the environmental impact.
Absolutely. And when we talk about sustainable, it means practices that are able to be maintained over the long term without causing harm to the environment. Eco-friendly is another term that refers to products or practices that are not harmful to the environment.
Great explanations. And here's an idiom that fits well: leave no stone unturned. This means to do everything possible to achieve your goal, which, in this case, is making your travel as sustainable as possible.
Love that idiom. It really emphasizes the effort we should put into being responsible travelers. Another phrase to keep in mind is green travel, which means traveling in a way that minimizes environmental impact.
Exactly. And for our listeners, small changes can make a big difference. For example, bringing a reusable water bottle, avoiding single-use plastics, and opting for eco-friendly tours are all great ways to travel more sustainably.
Right. It's all about making conscious choices that contribute to preserving the beauty of our planet for future generations.
And every little bit helps. So, as you plan your next adventure, think about how you can incorporate sustainable practices into your travel routine.
Absolutely. By being mindful of our impact, we can all contribute to a more sustainable world while enjoying our travels.
So, let's continue to explore the world responsibly and make a positive difference. Thanks for joining us on this journey of discovery and learning.
We hope you found today's tips helpful and inspiring. Safe travels, everyone, and see you next time.
And that wraps up our discussion on sustainable travel. It's been such a pleasure sharing these insights with you, Philip.
Absolutely, Sarah. We've covered a lot today: vacation planning, favorite destinations, memorable travel experiences, useful language tips, cultural differences, and sustainable travel practices.
It's been an exciting journey through all these aspects of travel. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have and that you've picked up some useful tips along the way.
We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. What are some of your favorite travel destinations or sustainable practices you follow? Feel free to share in the comments below.
And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, let us know. We're always eager to explore new ideas and help you with your travel and language learning needs.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We have more exciting content coming your way.
Thank you for tuning in and being part of our community. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep making those amazing travel memories.
Safe travels, everyone, and see you in our next episode.
Take care and goodbye for now.